He's my hero. He really is my hero. He has difficult battles too, and he is killing them. So, woo! I work from home for a local company and I can flex my workday. While that makes managing my child's and my weekday appointments and my own anxiety that much more bearable, it also makes for a very long and emotional week. And it can be exhausting working my schedule to make sure that I'm not using any more FMLA than I have PPO because I'm a single mom. I need every single penny that I make. I am owned by a ginger feline hiding behind me named Helen Pauline, who sits in my office window stalking the local robin family and begging me for treats. And as far as my diagnoses go, I indirectly work in the healthcare system, and I have yet to find a diagnosis code for dumpster fire. Official ones are depression, anxiety, PTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and bipolar 2. I suspect I'm also ADHD. All right, here's the disclaimer, because honestly, when I signed up to do this, I expected to be addressing small, local, in-person groups. I mean, I knew that my story would grow, but I never expected the first telling of this story would be online to whoever's watching. But that does require some stricter ground rules. So if I cry, forgive me. 3 years ago, my life fell apart. I was homeless while I was training for the job I currently have. People I'd once called my best friends were joking about me being suicidal. My own husband at the time told my grandmother while I was in the psych ward that if I had succeeded in killing myself, he would just turn my body over to the state and they could throw me in a ditch for all he cares. Yeah, he told my grandma that. That was fun. Nasty rumors flew around my hometown gossip mongers and within my family, most of whom I still do not allow into my life. DCFS took my child. They were going to put him in foster care. Had I not signed off for him to stay with my ex-husband and his family, the very people who are trying to get sole custody away from the dangerous woman who attacked their son unprovoked and for no reason. Sure. Once I was allowed to see him, he would tell me that I was going to hell for loving girls and that he didn't want to be with me because he was afraid of me. Oof, that's a lot, right? So I've done a lot of work on myself to get to where I am today. And it's because I have very strict rules for when I'm talking about what I went through. Rule number 1, human memory is fickle, especially memory with trauma involved. In any situation, the numbers of points of view is as great as the number of people involved and depends on how their own experiences have shaped who they are. I've been called a liar. I've been told I'm remembering it wrong, that I'm looking for attention, bringing shame upon my family. And it's important to know that this is my story as I remember it. As I've processed my trauma these past years, I do begin to see the past events in a new light. But that doesn't mean that what I went through was any less real. It was extremely real to me, and I live with that hurt daily. Rule number 2, everyone does the best they can with what they have. And this is straight from Brene Brown's qualitative research and is outlined in her book, Rising Strong. It's incredibly hard sometimes to tell yourself someone who's being cruel to you is doing the best they can do because their best happens to be terrible. But they don't know what they don't know, and all you can do is speak your truth. So this is a 2-part rule, because speaking truth can be a real show with unexpected consequences. The second part of this rule is boundary setting, and it can really, really suck. The most painful boundary I've set is with my grandmother. I love her to bits. My grandmother is a rural farm wife with health problems and really doesn't have anything to do except take care of grandpa and worry about me. She has a particular news station on constantly and just thinks that every talking head is the gospel truth. Well, I follow the actual news, and I am well versed in the factual socio-political climates of the Middle East or China or the vanishing middle class. Well, she likes to try to talk about the things she's seen on her news show. And I used to get mad and frustrated. I used to try to educate her, tell her, hey, this is my academic area. I know what I'm talking about. Oh, I never realized my grandma could make me so mad. I don't think she was being intentional with, I know she wasn't being intentional. The woman loves me to bits. I did a 180 and she doesn't know what happened. So I just think she genuinely could not understand how her sweet Christian granddaughter went from being happily married to a heathen lesbian. She kind of lost her mind when I came out of the closet. I paid all that money for a wedding and you're a lesbian? I'm not going down that rabbit hole today, though. Saving that one for my upcoming podcast. So my grandmother was being an energy vampire, and I had very little energy to begin with most days. I grew resentful of her for texting me several times a day asking about quid pro quo and where the Ukraine was on a map. And I started to get snippy, then downright mean, and I felt guilty. But all of those things cost me energy I did not have. My grandmother, though, had nothing else to do but take care of Grandpa and worry about me. She's not teachable, and I'm losing my marbles trying. If I can control trying to educate her, why can't I control not trying to educate her? So I did. Whenever she brought up something of a political nature, I neutrally recited my mantra. Grandma, I'm not going to talk about politics with you. And then I would redirect the conversation. You know, setting the boundary with someone the first time feels really scary, and it's really freeing, and it's unknown, and it's totally foreign to you. But by the time you set it the 100th time, it's basically your second nature. The times in between, though, you're going to feel so indignant that it keeps just getting walked all over. You're going to be mad that, why can't they have more respect for me? I've told them no. I've told them I don't want to talk about this. Why do they keep bringing it up? Guess what, though? All of that takes energy away from what you want to be doing with your life. So make boundaries second nature and remind yourself why. Because your energy vampires need rules or they will drain you dry. Rule number 3, I don't care what 99.99 infinity% of people think of me when it comes to speaking out about what I've been through. I realize the people who judge me the harshest and say the cruelest things have their own stuff to work through, and it's easier to just write me off and trash talk me rather than face the daunting task of working through their own stuff. So those are my rules. So here's my story. What happened? When did I realize I needed to majorly get my shit together? Well, I've actually never been a happy kid, like ever. My high school class voted me the most pessimistic, though I'd prefer to call it realistic. So I just owned it as I left for another college and another degree with honors and enjoyed how revered my brains finally were. Man, I was too big for my britches. I see now. I felt so superior. I got the best grades, academic success. After graduation day, what they don't tell you is that no one really gives a crap what your GPA was in grad school. Whatever. So I got married and I had my son. I was not a happy adult either. Shocker, I know. But I never learned how. And you don't know what you don't know, right? So I faked it. Oh, I faked happy so hard. Sure, I saw the occasional therapist, 15 of them to be exact. But I usually found a new hobby to redirect my energies or add an additional cat to my herd. And I stopped when therapy got hard and required me to actually make difficult changes about how I think, because good Lord, do our toxic coping skills eminent domain our brains. So yeah, I quit when it got hard. And that was working pretty well for me until I realized my 5-year-old hated me. And it was one of those traumatic moments, one of those traumatic memories that gets stored in your physical memory, so you can't really remember the chronology, just what you saw or smelled or felt. Well, I remembered the way the light shone through the tall window in our cathedral ceiling, 10-year-old cookie cutter house. I remember the rage that coursed through my veins because I was just fed up with this obstinate child. And I did what I knew. I yelled at him. I got right in his face and screamed at him. The unadulterated hatred in his eyes. And that hatred really rang a bell. Several, in fact. Pretty sure my own parents would have seen it hundreds of times in my own eyes through the years. That was my tipping point. I would not have my kid hate me. I needed to do this parenting thing differently. I needed help, real help. So I sought out therapist number 16. And within 2.5 years, I had done a 180 in coming to terms with childhood trauma and emotional issues. I let stuff go and I became strong. Coincidentally, this was when my marriage began to crumble, but I hung in there, hoping that I could lead by example and change my family. So another 2 years of me growing into who I was, parenting an increasingly challenging little boy, because mom changed the way she parented, so suddenly he was a lot less spoiled. And I was married to a man who had no idea who I had become. And then the dumpster fire started. And this is the part that's really hard to talk about. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, just kind of a vague overview. October of 2016, I was fired for a stupid reason from my job of 4 years. A week later, my house floods. It's legit raining in my basement and things are just ruined. November, the husband gets promoted at work. Suddenly he's gone 14, 16 hours a day and I'm alone. So depressed that I didn't hear the water running for 5 hours because I was sleeping. Yet I had to parent. Somebody had to. I parented from bed for 6 months as depression raged. My house was slowly dried out and cleaned up, but destroyed, and we couldn't find a contractor, so it just sat, all torn up. The 7 cats started peeing and pooping in dirty laundry and clean laundry and then everywhere. I didn't intend to replace half the crap that got wrecked. So I took the contents portion of the insurance money because it was my wrecked stuff. And I bought season tickets for the White Sox, a laptop, a pair of Doc Martens, which my grandmother calls ugly lesbian boots. So naturally I wear them with everything, including my party dresses. Super fun. Things came to a head one afternoon when I was supposed to be at a Sox game. Physical memory prohibits the actual recollection of what happened, but I remember coming home before the game and sitting on the couch with a crying kid because his dad had yelled at him. I remember my husband spewing hateful words at me, the last of them being, "It would be a bleeping miracle if you could keep a bleeping job, you lazy, fat, bleep, 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 bleep." And that day, my PTSD chose fight, and I attacked him. I climbed on his lap, I put my hands around his neck, and I shook him and I screamed in his face, "Why are you doing this to me? Why do you hate me so much? What have I done? Just stop." I snapped out of it and I called my therapist. He took the kid and he left, and he also took his gun, which as soon as I realized that gun was gone, I snapped right back into PTSD mode and I called the cops. telling them my husband left with his gun on our son, and I was terrified that he was going to kill my son. The cops came, and I told them everything, fully expecting to be arrested at this point. I'd assaulted my husband. I puked in an oil barrel that we used as a trash can, and somehow I fell asleep after the cops checked on my husband and kid at his parents' house. So the next morning is a blur, but here's what I've got. The kid had a therapy appointment. I went in and told the therapist exactly what happened, not mincing words, not trying to make myself look anything other than, this is what happened. Help us deal with it, please. Husband took the kid to his sister's house. I went home. DCFS shows up at the door, toured the house, said Oliver was to stay with his aunt until the house was cleaned up. I called a friend to help me start cleaning, and I ended up asking for a ride to the ER. I walked in myself. I walked up to that counter and I told a complete stranger that I didn't want to live anymore and that I needed help. I knew it would destroy my life, but being dead would destroy my life a lot more, you know? And my child having a mom who killed herself was not even an option. So 5 days later, with a bipolar 2 diagnosis and new meds and a new job that actually found me 2 short weeks before it all went to hell. Talk about the universe looking out, right? I started picking up the pieces. What helps? There are 3 things I want to go over that help me. Number 1, showing compassion to your inner critic. And this is really hard because you live with a bully inside your head. When you've lived through some crap, that inner critic is what helped your brain survive. It's what helped you survive. It's basically like Stockholm syndrome, but for your memory. As a kid, my parents were not able to be the parents that I needed for whatever reason. I see that now. But when I was a kid, my kid brain was like, these people are supposed to love me and take care of me. And why do they hate me? You know what? There must be something wrong with me. And that is how I survived for years. When I started working things out in therapy, I realized the life I'd built was a bare bones Jenga tower held together by self-loathing and sadness. While that inner critic wove self-esteem crushing stories about me in my life, he helped me survive, the ultimate primal instinct. But once you're past basic survival and you want to thrive and live a wholehearted, joyful life, your inner critic needs retrained, and you have to do it yourself. Oh, I know, it really sucks. This crap's not your fault. I mean, it's not anyone's fault, really, because remember, people are doing the best they can with what they have, even if their best is terrible. And while what happened in your life may not be your fault, healing it is your responsibility. I tried the easy stuff first, telling the critic to F off, straight up ignoring him, telling him you were wrong. Didn't work. Not only did it work, but it made him It made him craftier and worse, because remember, his job is to keep me alive and safe. And this is the way he's always done it, by telling me that I'm a big-mouthed, overeducated, fat girl weirdo who people tolerate because they have to. Ooh, that hurts saying that out loud. Anyway, my therapist suggested a different approach. Show the critic compassion. Honor him for helping me survive this long. Gently remind him of his purpose and re-educate. That means being hyper aware of my inner dialogue, which is really hard to do at first, because analyzing what's going on in your mind enough to redirect that critic feels like a full-time job. But once you start showing the critic compassion, things start to change. Critic, I appreciate what you've done for me and how you've helped me survive all this rotten crap. I honor that. I honor how you're trying to help me survive today. My life circumstances are different now, so here's how best to help me today. Then I replace that criticism with a more balanced perspective. Number 2, recognizing patterns. Oh, Ellen knows I'm upset because she's right at my feet. Number 2, recognizing patterns and using traumatic memories for your greater good. Oh, I used to be head over heels for a girl. We'll call her Grace. We were suite mates in undergrad together, back when I was so far in the closet I was writing Aslan to class. We shared a very dramatic year that ended when I scrubbed the suite toilet with her toothbrush. Yes, I was a total jerk at the time. We reconnected, though, after I'd done a 180 and I'd had my son. And by this time, I was straddling that closet line and had a husband who thought it was hot that I had a thing for a girl, at least until his mother found out. Then suddenly I was a cheating whore, but I digress. So I confessed. I told her I loved her. Did not go well. Let's just leave that train wreck to maybe a podcast episode or 20. That was in 2015. Yet with every new therapy, revelation, and life-changing thought pattern, I thought, you know what? I should text her to tell her that I've changed. And predictably, every time I'd get my hopes up and cling to her generic 2-word responses. My therapist helped me walk through why would I keep seeking someone out who hurt me so badly when I was just starting to get my life back on track. Well, we identified my inner critic as the culprit. He was trying to give me some semblance of who I used to be, because being mentally healthy was so foreign and scary. Oh, life's going too well with people who say they love you. Better seek out someone who makes you feel like crap to remind you who you really are. That's really messed up, but it's familiar. Transforming your life is unfamiliar and scary. So your critic seeks out some familiar, so you text her. And then you get your heart broken again. So now every time I want to text her, especially now because she's a nurse on Chicago's North Side somewhere, I remind myself that that woman is my car with no brakes. And I remember what it's like being in a car with no brakes. Don't do it. That's using traumatic memory for good. I mean, seriously, have you ever been in a car that suddenly just brakes are gone? I will never forget. I will never forget the pure terror of flying down Harlem and Perryville at the stoplight, praising every guardian that I've ever had that happened to be green, screaming my head off as I'm swerving in front of Woodward, trying to stop my car on their landscaping. I got to Forest Hills and then the engine died too. So now I have a car with no brakes, no transmission, and a steering wheel that would not steer, and I was headed for a gas station. Somehow it got turned though, and I wound up in a field instead of blowing up a gas station. So now every time I feel like texting her, I remember my life flashing before my eyes as my brakeless car careened toward a gas station. And you know what? It works. Sometimes you just have to do what works. The third is being ready to feel the feelings and be willing to actually work through them. And it's the worst. I can't sugarcoat it. I can't give it rainbow sprinkles and a Starbucks gift card. Sitting with emotions is one of the most emotionally labor-intensive parts of therapy and healing process. That stuff's got to come out. You just have to hold on while it does. And accepting discomfort while you are feeling these feelings is a big part of that. So what's next? I have to be honest, I've adapted this part of my presentation for the current shit show we're all a part of. Rather than talk about my hopes and dreams of becoming a public speaker with a New York Times bestseller, taking my good camera back to Florence, or singing on stage in front of millions, I'm going to focus on my own vulnerabilities when it comes to being a mom. I have a great deal of fear when it comes to my relationship with my son. He's been with my ex-husband and grandparents since the stay-at-home order, and this is what's best for him. It's not up for debate. But I really fear that he's going to reject me for good because of their particular brand of Jesus. Take a quick sec to differentiate between the two. They're holier-than-thou Christians, and they are Christ-like Christians. My ex-husband's sister is a Christ-like Christian. Through this whole mess, she has shown me kindness and love. And when I thank her for being a Christ-like Christian, she's the first to remind me she's not perfect, and she's just trying to do the right thing. And she has. Holier-than-thou Christians are the opposite. Judge and hate, rules their world, and they see it as a kindness, a missions trip to Africa, not to simply feed and clothe the sick and poor, but to save their souls and make them convert. Well, Jesus called them Pharisees and Sadducees and had no tolerance for their hatred. So Oliver's with the latter of the two types right now, and I'm just really nervous who I'm going to get back. But I'm acknowledging that fear. I'm being honest about it. I'm facing it head on with the best therapist in town, my church family, and my close friends. Thank you for listening to my story. Next up, we have the lovely and talented Olachi.
Hello. Hi, my name is Olachi Tiffany Ito, and I just want to welcome everyone to In Our Own Voice this evening. We have a wonderful presentation set for you today. One of the things that I love doing is reading and writing memoir. It seems to me the most humanly evolved thing to listen to other stories and tell our own. Once I started reading memoirs, I couldn't stop taking them in. Even when I was in the hospital, I read everything from Trevor Noah's Born a Crime to Michelle Obama's Becoming. I like to think of this presentation as a live memoir. This is how we can become the ones to bear witness. It is so important to share the challenges we face, the suffering we've seen, because without the shared human story, how can we learn? How can we learn to change, to rebuild what is broken? We can become the compassionate ones to understand another's pain and bring about sea change to change this world together. One of my favorite quotes by Zora Neale Hurston is, "If you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it." We must learn to value challenges as it will bring us cognitively to higher levels of understanding. Understanding the world and the past, the things we won't put up with, to the visions of how we improve. Pain is what we need to sow joy and sow wisdom. So I hope with this speech I can share both my pain and the joy I found much later, and the promise I believe in for the future of mental health. As a 19-year-old at Boston University in 2008, I had my first account of illness symptoms. It was as if it happened overnight or like a sudden thunderstrike. Everything seemed fine until then the lights went out. It was January in the bitter cold of Boston, Inauguration Day, and I was hearing voices. I immediately took a train to Baltimore, where I am from. I was blessed to have a mother who was also a psychiatric nurse at Johns Hopkins Hospital to guide me through the process of finding help, a kind of help not many receive. The process was not a dream. When approaching a psychiatrist for the first time, many do not know what to say. How do you describe the most stigmatized thing to occur in your life? At 19, it felt like I was the only one in the world with a mental illness. It felt like it was a pain designed just for me, especially in the personal words of the voices I heard. If there were others out there with the same pain, they were nowhere where I could see them, nowhere close to me, I assumed. I went on to receive care through a psychiatrist at an outpatient center, trying different medications that might work for me. I had to leave Boston University because the symptoms were so pervasive. I attended a small school in my hometown called the University of Baltimore. Throughout my days there, I was plagued by voices, going from class to class with different voices trying to urge me of telepathy, a special power the voices told me I had. I didn't listen and I didn't detach from reality, but the voices were still there. It took a toll on my confidence and my social skills. It curbed my naturally extroverted personality. It seemed like because of the illness, I became someone else, someone I couldn't recognize. With my mental illness, there was no clarity, just noise. It made it at the time almost impossible to assert myself socially or independently of all the things that 20-year-olds do. So I mourned. I mourned the loss of my previous self, and I entered depression, trying hopelessly to become the person that I was before the illness. I wouldn't learn to stop mourning her or who I was for years to come. I ended up graduating cum laude, I was inducted into Sigma Iota Epsilon, a National Honor Society, and I was a Global Right Business Scholar with a BS in International Business. After graduation, I applied to a post-baccalaureate pre-medical school so I could pursue the path of becoming a psychiatrist. I thought that with my history of illness, I had many things to share with others to inform treatments and make a difference. I held with my hope and I got into NYU in New York and Loyola University Chicago. I picked Chicago to be my land of self-discovery, the place where I could come out of my shell and forget my illness. I believe that was my first mistake because I now know that it is impossible and also unhealthy to try and forget your illness. I studied at Loyola University of Chicago for a short while. Very soon after I left Baltimore, I started to suffer immobilizing panic attacks. The attacks were so bad that I ran out of a final biology exam in mid-test. I could barely withstand the financial stress of attending the school as well. It seemed that the stars were not aligned for me to stay in the program. I then started to work at an IT technology company and solutions provider in the West Loop of Chicago. It was a Fortune 500 company. In the beginning, I enjoyed working there. I even started a volunteer position at the Art Institute of Chicago. The city made me happy. I felt evolved and fulfilled. I was growing creatively in the culture of the city. I had friends and enjoyed life on the north side of Chicago until the illness that I tried to forget reared its ugly head. It was hard for me at this time to make it to all of my psychiatry appointments because work was so consuming. I missed one or two. The stress of my job eventually took over and I had what is called a breakthrough episode. That is when the symptoms of your illness break through the barriers of your medication. I immediately fell into a psychosis. I was having hallucinations and delusions. I thought I was traveling through time. I thought my coworkers wanted to kill me. I barely knew my own name. I had a full break with reality. I was no longer Olachi. The world I was in did not exist in the real one. I walked the city of Chicago barefoot for weeks. At one point, I was even raped. My mother kept calling Chicago police for a welfare check for them to find me, but they told her they couldn't help until I did something. My psychosis led me to O'Hare Airport, where I was hallucinating and hearing gunshots. I was under the delusion that the airport was under siege. I found a mother and a child who I thought needed my help to escape. It felt exactly like a mass shooting or a terrorist attack. In order to help, I picked up the woman's child to help her flee. Only no one was fleeing, and that was the psychosis. I took several steps towards an escalator, and the mother took the child back from me while I was still hallucinating. After that incident, I wandered off and went to Starbucks. Not too long after Starbucks, I was approached by several police officers who arrested me. They charged me with aggravated kidnapping. It was the biggest mistake of my life that only occurred because of my illness. Under psychosis, you are not aware of reality. You are not aware of right and wrong. It was only me and the hallucinations, the gunshots. Insanity had taken over my life. I was eventually deemed not guilty by reason insanity. I went to a mental health center outside of Chicago for treatment. Before the hospital, I thought it was impossible to get rid of auditory hallucinations or voices. I learned this was not the case when I worked with the doctor to get on the right medication. The medication saved my life. It's been over 3 years and the voices no longer run my life because I can't hear them, due in large part to medication, strong coping skills, and therapy. I found a support network in the people at NAMI Chicago. They showed me that the world is even more attuned to mental illness. The stigma is not an unbreakable thing. Mental illness is coming to the forefront of who we are. And if I didn't have NAMI to help me work on my advocacy, my clarity from the medication would only be half as sweet. I have a support network, people that love me and root for me. and that lightens the cross I bear. A daily living of medication, exercise, and writing as my coping skill is my foundation to a stronger life. Having a collaborative relationship with a psychiatrist was essential to finding and pinpointing the right medication. I now have a psychiatrist I can trust, who doesn't force meds for the sake of it, but makes every pill she does give mean something. Sometimes I wonder if I had not gone to the hospital after the verdict, would I still be free from voices? The answer is yes, because I had the willingness to work with a psychiatrist and take medication. This was essential to me finding recovery. I also don't forget the power of me. Believing in myself as someone who can strive and succeed is what helps on a daily basis. I look at the world and I feel inspired to laugh and create and move with this universe, its blessings and its trials, to never knock the adventure, but embrace the path. That is what keeps me going every day. I commit to a life with mental illness, but it doesn't mean that that will be a bad one. In fact, I think it's the opposite. An adversity like mental illness gives me a unique wisdom and openness to life, which is now much richer and vast from my experiences. Mental illness is not the end. It can be a new beginning, should you decide it's yours. What are my plans for the future? In my future, I want to become an entrepreneur or start my own business, only after publishing a memoir about the mental illness reflections that I've had to date. Preferably a business that would be in the position to help people in situations like the many I've seen. I enjoy writing, as the pen is mightier than the sword. I wish to make a difference through words and through action. But for right now, I wish to take each step and appreciate the smallest things, like smelling the rain outside of my window or seeing my family. Those are the things that should not be taken for granted. Thank you. And now I'll hand it over to Tim Coe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tim. I hope you're all enjoying the presentation tonight. I'm going to get started with my story here. I'm Tim. I enjoy coffee. I'm a techie, which means I love technology. Probably too much, but I love it. I'm also a mental health and suicide prevention advocate, and let's just get into it. I've had to deal with mental illness since childhood. I have a very high functioning form of autism, and in my early years, it provided hurdles I had to jump over. I'll start my story around the time everything hit the fan, otherwise known as my senior year of high school. I was firing on all cylinders for the first half of the year. But then that second semester, as we approached graduation, I fell apart. I went to a high school that was very overprotective and wasn't very how do I put this? Good at the way they prepared you for adulthood. And I got really scared to go to college, and I started having panic attacks every day, multiple times a day. I essentially fell apart. I started falling into what I can only describe as the deepest, darkest period of my life. Depression also had taken over my entire world to the point where I couldn't get anything done. It's honestly kind of a miracle I graduated that year. Depression for me sucks the life out of me. Many times I don't feel anything but numb. As a naturally emotional and expressive person, not being able to feel takes so much from me. Around the same time, I was also having massive panic attacks, like I mentioned before. I like to tell people who have never had a panic attack that it feels like you're having a massive heart attack and you think you're dying. But then imagine for me having that feeling 3 or more times a day, and it goes on for months and months on end. During the summer between high school and college, my panic attacks were beginning to be triggered by seemingly anything and everything. Each and every one of them were massive. It felt like each attack would just take a little bit more out of me until when it finally subsided. It was like I was fading away. This got to the point where I had had enough. By the end of my first semester of college, I was worn out. I felt I had no one in my life to be my advocate. I got a lot of advice, but it had just been the stuff that wasn't helpful. The quote, pull yourself up by your bootstraps doesn't work if you were just too depressed to put on footwear at all that morning. When it comes down to it, all I really wanted, what I really needed, quite frankly, was for someone to get down on my level, look me straight in the eye and ask, Tim, are you okay? I think that's all it would have taken, honestly, to stop what happened next. Early that next year, in early 2013, right after Inauguration Day, actually, I almost died by suicide. Thankfully, as you can see, that was not the end of my story. It wasn't by a long shot. After I attempted to take my life, I was hospitalized for about 5 days. During my stay in the hospital, it was very rough for the first couple days. I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my life, and I don't think I'll ever cry again that much, or cry that much again since. But during the hospital stay, I also learned coping mechanisms that remain with me to this day. One of those, one of the things that we did, the first thing they did in the hospital is get my medication under control, and that has been a major help, but it wasn't everything. In the hospital, I was also taught breathing exercises. For me, my mind will often get away from me, and before I know it, I'm upset and anxious. Between being able to take deep breaths in and out has helped me enormously. I've even found an app that has been an essential tool in my recovery process. Being a person who verbally processes life while living with people who are not that way can pose some challenges. So regular talk therapy has been a key to my recovery. I'm on therapist number 4, and finally I found the one that works for me. It took me some time to find the right fit, but my current counselor is one of the best things that has ever happened to me. She's empowered me in my recovery maybe more than anyone else. After leaving the hospital, I continued to find means of self-care that deeply helped me. Those aren't limited to just taking a break, having a weighted blanket on hand, and simulation games. Also, being able to talk to myself, self-talk has been very helpful. Being able just to confront my emotions and compartmentalize everything. My friends and family, who were the ones who didn't understand what I was going through before, quickly became my biggest advocates. One of them even wound up joining his local NAMI when he went off to a new school, and now he is becoming a counselor, which is incredible. And finally, technology has been the saving grace of my life. Tinkering with computers and operating systems has provided me countless hours of comfort and an outlet. So what's next for me? Well, one of the greatest stressors and something that caused me the most anxiety back in the darkest periods of my life was public speaking. So for me to sit here tonight and tell my story in front of the whole internet is a success, and a pretty major one at that. It's important to say that for me, success often looks like 2 steps forward and 1.5 steps back. Recovery is a journey, oftentimes a journey taken on a roller coaster, but for me, it's all been worth it. Back in 2018, I even went back to school to pursue my dream career in the media. I want to be a journalist and go into video production. Sorry, Dad. I have always loved video editing and writing, and now I'm on the path to make that a full-time gig. Advocating for others who may be in the place I was all those years ago is something I wouldn't have been able to do beforehand, but now it's what my heart beats for. I don't want anyone who crosses my path to feel they're alone or unworthy or hopeless. My goal is to be there for anyone who needs a listening ear. It may be someone to get down on their level, look them in the eyes, and ask, are you okay? And with that, I'll turn it over to Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy. Bipolar befriends me. Anxiety annoys me. Borderline personality disorder traits try to describe me. Again, hey, I'm Tracy. I had my first nervous breakdown around 14 or 15 years old. Many things were happening in my personal life. I withdrew from the people I loved in my life in total. I was not taking care of myself physically or mentally. I was in extreme emotional pain and no longer had a will to live. After this, my parents admitted me to the hospital where what it seemed like I'd stay forever. At the end of my stay, they gave me the diagnosis of bipolar 2 disorder with borderline tendencies and PTSD. The doctor decided it was no longer a good idea for me to live with my mother, which led me to living with my father and his new girlfriend. Things that have already they've separated during my hospital stay. After receiving my diagnosis, I thought about it as an addition to the already many things that had happened to me. I had a difficult time understanding the diagnosis, but I felt better. Now I had new medications to take and a new journey to begin. Bipolar has always tried to befriend me. If you ever lost your direction in the rain on a road trip to a place you've never wanted to be in the first place, you could start to understand what it's like to live with bipolar. Acceptance of my illness is what I needed to do to stay well. I was hospitalized at least 3 other times during the next 30 years. Following having my last break, I actually had to call the police on myself 3 different times within 3 weeks. Being in the darkest place that I've ever been really taught me a lesson. I had to start taking my recovery very seriously. So when I mean acceptance of my illness and what I need to do to stay well is my way out of hell. I had to learn new skills, accountability, and finally take a look at the bigger picture. Different things work for different people, and I had to find out what worked for me. What works for me, you ask? Talk therapy, support groups, supported living, being involved in my community, my Stars of Light family, NAMI volunteer work, my church family, and my faith, and my art. Being able to share this with you right now not only helps you, but it helps me too. I found stepping stones where I had the opportunity to interview for a spot in the care. I moved from a nursing home where I thought I'd be the rest of my life the day after I turned 50. I became a part of this family. It is a great place for me. I have a lot of different types of support in my life because of where I live, my church, and my therapist and my caseworker. Knowing I have all my support and friends and family on my side makes me feel extremely grateful and blessed. You have to work at recovery. You have to surf the waves. I choose to live my recovery journey every day, and that's why my treatment works. Managing medications, life skills, my creativity, humor, diet, exercise, leisure time and support, spirituality, and so on are only some of my coping skills. Finding balance is important. Following my wellness plan is what I use to maintain my stability, safety, and security. What's next for me? What next for me is success for me is being able to share my story and living my journey of recovery every day. Happiness is giving back to others with my creativity, whether it's acting, poetry, volunteering, or just sharing time with my others. Being able to do this is what I look forward to in my future. Happiness is like surfing the waves, being at a beach or in the mountains, being at peace in yourself, having self acceptance, faith, hope, love, and knowing you're not alone. Being in this present moment is a gift. I'm a millionaire, but not that kind of a millionaire. And now I'd like to turn it over to the very lovely Miss Jeanette.
Good evening. My name is Jeanette. I'm the mother of 2 wonderful daughters, and I'm a grandmother of 6, 3 boys and 3 girls. One of my hobbies or passions is cooking for friends and loved ones. As a matter of fact, right now I'm making 3 large pizzas as I'm doing this broadcast. Even though I'm over half a century old, I still am in daily contact with both my parents and my children. Another passion of mine is sharing my personal experiences of living with a diagnosed mental illness. For many years, I hid my condition as best I could. Then I was encouraged at some point to share with others to help educate and encourage them on their journey. At this point, I'm going to talk about my childhood a little bit. My childhood was marked by depression, but I didn't have a name for it back then. These bouts intensified as the years went on. Thoughts of hopelessness and worthlessness filled my mind. In 1995, I suffered some medical malpractice and subsequently experienced my first manic episode. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it landed me in Oakwood Hospital after a minor stroke. As my husband and children visited me one day, I was offered lithium for the very first time. After reading about the possible side effects, I declined. I was soon released from the hospital because it shut down. I found out that I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. To me, this is a cruel, heinous, and insidious disease. I've survived its torment. I was in denial for many years thereafter, unmedicated, receiving no mental health care. The bouts of mania intensified. I exhibited risky behavior. I had periods of hypersexuality. I had unprotected relations with multiple partners. I threw away an 18-year marriage to a minister. The stress of what I was experiencing caused my youngest daughter to break out in a rash from head to toe. After extreme manic episodes, I would sink increasingly into deeper and deeper depression. I would mull over all the horrible decisions that I made while I was manic. During one such manic episode, I met my second husband, abandoned my first husband, and moved across town. I had strained relationships with my entire family. About 7 years after my initial diagnosis, I was hospitalized and began taking medication. A case with Janet Waddles was opened up. When I thought nobody was looking, I stopped taking my medication. I started getting in trouble with the law. I was in and out of various hospitals. I was even homeless by choice a few times, hanging out with unsavory characters on the street. After landing in jail one last time, I was sent to Elgin Mental Health Center in the forensics unit. I had a 4-month stay. Meds were given, and I was finally stabilized. I began to see hope for my future. The staff was so kind and caring that I made a decision to work in this field. Upon my release, the real work of recovery began. My meds were placed in a locked box. A Janet Waddles staff member had the key. I presented myself twice a day. for meds while being monitored. My life soon progressed to the point where I was offered a full-time job taking care of others dealing with mental illness in a group home setting. Best job ever. Since exiting the workforce a few years later, I began to try to hide my story. I can no longer, in good conscience, do that. I want to share with the world my experiences and let everyone know that hope, help, support, and recovery do exist. Never give up on yourself. You are worth the effort. I'm thankful to everyone who assisted me on my journey. Thank you.
You all are the best. I want to thank all of our speakers tonight who've become my friends, and they're just amazing human beings that have like the bravery to share their story, which is so personal to all of them. I want to open it up now. I don't know if some of you weren't on beforehand when we started. I did say that if you have questions, please type them in the chat box, just so we can kind of mainstream this in one way. Also, Facebook, if you want to comment your questions, I'd be happy to read them to our presenters. If you have a direct question or just a general question, I will unmute all of our speakers to talk, if you have any.
Tim, I need to know the name of your little critter there on that bed, please.
Oh, that
Imperative.
it's called an anxiety blob.
Oh, I can
Yeah.
relate.
I love it. Here, I'll bring it closer.
Oh, I want one. No, I am one. Oh,
I love him.
So
Yeah.
No questions?
come
Sorry,
on, y'all.
Yeah.
Come on. I said y'all. Now you have to ask something.
Heather, yeah, I did record this, so I can share this also, the whole thing. I might have missed like the first sentence of Annie's, unfortunately, but yes.
It's all good.
This is my first time trying to record all these things and put them on Facebook and stuff like that.
You're doing a great job.
Thanks.
You are.
Valerie, what's your
Awesome.
question? You can type it down here if that's okay.
Hi, Valerie.
Also, Sue wants to say thank you to all of you for having the courage to present your stories, and you were awesome.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy would also like to say thank you, everyone, for sharing their stories. She's wondering if you had one thing to do over again, would you change anything based on what you've learned about yourself?
I would have got on my medication and stayed on my medication, because what I learned the hard way is that trauma can bring about mania. Mania brings about horrible life decisions. And after you hit the brick wall, you fall into a deep depression. So I would encourage anybody, find the right medication, work with your therapist, work with your doctor, stay on your meds, even if you feel well.
Yeah, and just to echo that point, I'd like to say the easy answer would be no, I wouldn't change a damn thing. I mean, it was all worth it. But honestly, if I'm being honest, I'd love a lot of do-overs. The main one being echoing what Jeanette said, medicine. Like, there's a time I got off my medicine and it was a train wreck. I would have listened to my doctors if I did it over. I would have done everything so much different in that scenario. There was also a time where I completely, without fail, cut everyone out of my life, even the supportive people. I just ghosted everyone. And I wouldn't have done that. That just compounded a lot of problems in my life. But it's important in that scenario to realize who is toxic and who is not, because I'm what they call an empath, which means I'm very I can feel other people's pain in my own body when people are in pain, emotional and physical. And there are certain people like narcissists or what we call energy vampires that will just completely suck the life out of you. And I think those people don't belong in your life. But getting off track there, I would just say that I would have a lot of do-overs if I could do things over.
I personally wish that I had spent more time trying to discover the right medication before the whole criminal justice aspects of my story took place. I think that if I had taken that path more seriously, I could have avoided several years of pain. I also wish that the amount of time that I spent mourning the person that I was before the illness was a little bit of a waste of time. And in a certain way, it kind of created another cage for me, another type of depression, as I just, I wish someone could have told me, hey, you're probably not going to be the exact same person you were before you came down with your mental illness. But that doesn't mean you cannot be a happy person or a successful person. So instead of trying to turn back time and jump in a time machine and be someone that I was no longer, I wish I would have spent that time constructively building a new person, the person with an illness, but also a person that copes, a person that enjoys their family and is successful in their own right.
Annie, Sue has a question for you. How do
Right,
you
Sue.
how do you silence your inner critic?
I've been working more and more on showing as much compassion to the inner critic as possible, because I've just surrendered to the fact that here's how I described it one time. It feels like I've got an angel and a devil on my shoulders. They both have the voice of Gilbert Gottfried. They both have megaphones, and the megaphones are pointed at my head, at my ears, and in the middle, I'm being waterboarded. That is how it feels sometimes. And I have just decided to make my critic work for me. And that's really hard, but I mean, you can't shut him up. He's part of you. He helped you survive. Thanks, man. But the things you're saying to me now, I'm not in survival mode anymore. So I need, let's be pals. Let's work this out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Valerie asked, does anyone use arts for the healing? Like visual arts, music, drumming, poetry, writing, etc.?
I write
Writing.
quite a bit. Well, when I was in the hospital, I tried to write every day. And over the time that I was there, I feel like it kind of became like a muscle that you could build up just like any other skill, but it was also a giving muscle, right? So there was a lot that I got from it. It kind of created a way that I could heal, digest what was happening to me on my road to recovery. Music I used to really love, not so much anymore, because I feel like sometimes when you get to be a certain age, you just keep replaying the music of your youth and you don't build on it anymore. But I love art. I used to volunteer at the Art Institute, so that was definitely something that I wanted to get back into doing. It's like possibly be a docent, because it can be so cathartic just to look at someone's like representation of hope or pain on a canvas. And I hope that's something that I can get into soon.
Yeah, for me, writing has also been incredibly helpful. I do have a blog. But most of the writing I've done, I have a whole journal from that period in my life that I shared tonight, and it's just completely it's just my thoughts just laid out. And writing, I'm much better with the written word than the spoken word. I just love to write. It helps me compartmentalize everything. It helps me kind of put in perspective what's important and what needs to kind of go by the wayside. Also for me, I consider it art. It's graphic design and video editing. I've loved to video edit and create motion graphics on the computer since I was probably in 4th grade. So that passion has only gotten better with age, and that's kind of what I'm going to school for now, kind of combining those two passions, those two arts into one. So yeah.
Oh,
I
all the
like
rest of you
to
artists.
do my acting. There's nothing that makes me feel better when I can get a big old belly laugh from people when I'm on stage, but then also giving back that way of really seriously educating and know where I've been and helping them. But just to get people to laugh, that makes my heart feel so good.
Same.
What helps me is I have a mental health page on Facebook. It's a private page called Eliminating Mental Health Stigma. So that page is an outlet for me, like a safe community where we can discuss mental illness, crack a few jokes sometimes,
Yeah.
do live interviews. I interview people. I have a co-administrator who's actually in my kitchen, but she doesn't want to get on camera. But we just talk about what really goes on with mental illness, and it's a very encouraging place. It's not a sad, dreary place, but I encourage people, and it just helps me tremendously.
I would also say cooking is an art, Jeanette, right?
Oh, yes.
You guys want to see one of my pizzas?
Yes.
Yeah, let's see
No,
it.
I want to eat one
Yes.
of your pizzas. You kidding me?
Okay, the pizza crust came from Lino's.
I'm not going to judge.
Ooh,
Number one.
Beautiful.
Oh, that looks great.
amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Adopt me.
I do have a couple more questions here, guys. Yes, it looks amazing, Jeanette. Thank you for showing us. Shiraz, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. She asked, what would you say to someone who is scared of getting on meds? And she also says you are also brave to share your stories.
Is it Shiraz?
Shiraz, yes?
Shiraz.
Yeah,
Oh, hi. She's from my church. I love her.
I would say that, it's, first of all, it's completely normal to be nervous about taking medications, especially in the beginning. They do have their risks, but they do also have benefits. And I think that cost benefit analysis is something that you'll have to look into, like with your doctor. The thing that I would say is definitely speak up for yourself, and make sure your psychiatrist or whoever's prescribing you the meds knows that you're vocal and knows that you will advocate for yourself. So if you're ever feeling a certain way after you've taken your medications, voice that to your doctor. Voice everything that you think or feel while you're going through any sort of medication transition or taking new meds. I think that if you have a vigilant psychiatrist, that should ease some of your anxieties about taking new medicine. If you guys have a strong relationship, I think, it's definitely a road to success should you take it. And, it's good to know that medication isn't for everyone. So some people can adopt really strong coping skills, and that's how they minimize some of their symptoms. But medication can also be a revelation to you if you let it. So just know that there's going to be advantages to trying it. You can only try and find out. And one of the things that, I found is trying this medication, I didn't know that I could stop hearing voices. I thought, okay, this is going to be me for the rest of my life. Like, I will have to have these auditory hallucinations. And it was in taking just this one kind of pill, Risperdal. I'll say, Risperdal is what has helped me. And then all of a sudden, I have no voices anymore. If I had taken the chance earlier on, I could have granted myself several more years of peace. So if, you know, that helps you in any way to kind of reconsider how you'll take medication, I just definitely think it's a road that is worth traveling.
Anybody else on medicine? What would you say to someone that's afraid of taking it? Was that the question? Yes. Someone's afraid of getting on medication. What would you say to
Well,
them?
you know, by the time you are considering medication, I don't know, at least for me, I got to the point where I can't live like this anymore. Something's got to give. My kid hates me. I
Yeah.
cannot. It's the last freaking thing I want to do, believe me. However,
Right.
I need to be here for my kid. I need to be here. I have a destiny. I have a mission. I've got people. I need to be here. And that means I have to take meds that mess with me sometimes because the good outweighs the bad. And you just learn to cope with it.
Right.
Yeah.
What I would say about medication is you have a choice. Either you take your meds or you'll end up in jail, in the
Mhm.
hospital, dead,
Yep.
or you will end up ruining everybody's life that's surrounding you. You lose your friendship. Sometimes lifelong friendships go down the tube. You get estranged from your family, and those things are hard to get back. So take your medication for yourself and for those that you love and those people that actually love you.
We just got a comment that said from Facebook that said, thank you everyone so much. This was incredible. Kathy also says, thank you to the speakers for sharing their stories and honesty and vulnerability. Your contributions are extremely valuable to our community.
Aw, thanks.
Thank
Nancy asked,
you.
this kind of goes with the last question. Do any of you feel like you've ever been over medicated because a controlled person is easier to handle?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, bless you for asking that.
Yeah.
Where was I? Shiraz also asked, what helps you stay on the path to recovery even when it gets difficult?
What helps you to stay on the path of recovery is when you turn around and look at what a mess you were. If you don't want to repeat the past, take your medication. If you don't want to destroy everybody and everything in your past, take your medication.
Every
Okay.
time I want to do something stupid, like text her, I remind myself of the things that I remind myself of that car with no brakes. I needed new pants by the time that car found a place to land. And I kind of talk myself through these things like, oh, I want to text her, see how she's doing. Well, Annie, if you text her, you're going to get a generic 2-word answer and it's going to depress you and you're going to have all these feelings dredged up again. Don't do it. Just don't do it. And then I kind of talk myself through it and then, oh yeah, that's why I do. Okay, nope, not texting her. You use it. You use the crap you've been through to help keep you on track.
Yeah, exactly. For
Mhm.
me, it's like just piggybacking off of Annie, just kind of recognizing where I've been and where I am now, and realizing that those are two totally different time periods in my life. And where I am now, you know, through a ton of support, through a ton of therapy and medicine, and just cognitively and behaviorally changing so much in my life. I can't go back to where I was. And that's especially true now when we're all stuck at home. And it's been scaring me a bit because I'm nervous about this disease, this virus, but I'm also trying to balance that with my mental health. How much news should I watch in a day? Because I am going into journalism. Not at the news network Annie talked about, but but real journalist, but I want to actually, I need to balance is really important for me. And I think I got off track there. Sorry about that. It's just figuring out where I was and where I am now and balance. I think it comes down to those things.
I think that's why it's so important that I surf the waves daily.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Someone commented on Facebook after hearing the stories to tell you that they appreciate it a lot, and they mentioned that they're pretty young, but mental health plays a role in their life, and hearing stories like this really helps them.
Good.
Good. I'm glad.
Vic
So,
wants. I'm sorry. Go
Can
ahead.
I say something to that person, whoever made that comment?
Yeah.
Find your tribe,
Mhm.
because once you find your tribe, you will be okay. That's all.
Yeah, and I want to say something too. When I was young, I didn't have this, or I didn't know NAMI or something like this existed. And finding people like NAMI, being a part of this community, has been a godsend to me. It's been incredible, and I'm lucky, and you're lucky to have people that understand. And if you don't have those in your actual personal life, find them, just like Annie said, because it does truly make such a difference.
I can think of some of the more like vulnerable positions that I had in my youth. And if I had heard something like this or had access to this information, especially on a personal level, it could help or influence or shape the way I approached my mental health and the way that I saw myself in the world as a person that was not alone in my suffering, but was a part of a much larger population that has their successes and triumphs too, and that I could be a person to move on with this information. I really do wish in my younger years I would have had this kind of outlet or heard these kinds of stories told to me.
Definitely. Vic wants to thank you, Tim, for sharing about being an empath and how narcissists took the energy right out of you. That really struck a chord with him because he lives with that every day, and he's read about it as well, and he can feel that way too. He says he loves to laugh, and it really helps him, like you guys were talking about. He said, "Believe it or not, my boss says I laugh too much and too loud. How would you guys respond to that?"
No such
I've been
thing.
told the exact same thing. So
Well, y'all just heard me snort, right? Because I was
Yeah.
laughing.
I love
you.
Lucy.
Yeah, you gotta laugh. You can laugh as loud as you want.
Yeah. DU. That's what I got to say to that.
Shiraz said again, thank you so much. Your stories bring strength and hope to so many. And Valerie also said thank you. Sorry. Honest and open people, my favorite group by far that I've done art for healing with. She did some collage stuff with us. And she's gonna send us some more information on doing some more art. So maybe that would be a good group to have online even. If anybody has any more questions or wants to get in touch with me with this group, you can email me at naminorthernillinois@gmail.com or call the office phone at 815-963-2470. I believe I have some of your emails from signing up for this. And you've gotten several more thank yous on Facebook, guys. And I want to thank you again for doing this for us. Everyone really appreciates it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great job, everyone.
Thanks to everyone out there.
Thank you,
Thank you all
everyone.
for coming.
Take
Au revoir.
care.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bonne nuit,
Goodbye.
monsieur.